A lovely good morning once again, our dear listener, with the time at 09:26, today the 27th day in the month of March in the year 2024. Good morning and welcome to this exclusive radio program brought to you by Zambia Law Development Commission. Remember, sustainability in urban planning, planning our cities for tomorrow's generation. This morning I'm joined by Commissioner Nkhata and of course Madam N.Chanda to help us discuss this very important topic discussion this morning, being a Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be your host this morning in the next 30 or 40 minutes. My name is Gift Ngambi, and of course stay tuned and stay blessed to your number one radio station, Zambezi FM Radio 94.1 FM. Good morning, Madam Nkhata, and welcome to Zambezi FM Radio.
Thank you so very much. Good morning, Gift. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much and good to see you.
Thank you.
Madam Chanda, welcome to Zambezi FM Radio and Livingstone.
Thank you, Gift, and good morning to you and the listeners.
All right, interesting. Getting the nitty-gritties of our program this morning, our dear listener. Allow me to just ask Madam Chanda to begin the program. Please tell us, what is the Zambia Law Development Commission all about?
Thank you, Gift. The Zambia Law Development Commission is a statutory body that is set up under an Act of Parliament. Administratively, we fall under the supervision of the Ministry of Justice. Our main responsibility as a commission is to undertake law reform and review of legislation. We look at Zambia's laws and look at which pieces of our legislation are old, which ones are archaic, which ones are no longer applicable to the Zambian public, and we make recommendations to the various government ministries for those laws to be amended. We also look at what new areas of law we should develop. If there are new developing issues, for example, nowadays we're talking about AI, we're talking about the use of ICT. So if that is a new area that we are looking at, then we will make recommendations for what legislation might need to be developed in that particular area. We mostly carry out our work through research, and for us it is also mandatory that we consult various stakeholders and members of the public when we make our recommendations or develop legislation. We are required that when we make recommendations, our recommendations reflect what are the political, social or cultural values of the Zambian people. So that is the commission in a nutshell.
Interesting, and there you have it, our dear listener. And of course, we understand what this arm of this this government institution is all about. And of course, I understand that, Madam, this afternoon you'll be having. You'll be having holding a legal seminar in Livingstone this afternoon under the theme sustainability in urban planning our cities for tomorrow's generation. All right, now, is this the first legal seminar the commission is holding? If not, tell us about the other seminars you have held in the past.
Thank you, Gift. This is the first legal seminar we are holding in the provinces, and we are happy that our first seminar is being held in Livingstone. As a commission, we are also mandated to hold legal seminars where we discuss various legal issues, so that as stakeholders we can identify what some of the gaps might be in our legislation or even just in practices to help us develop new areas of law. So we started holding seminars last year as a commission. Last year we held 3 seminars and they were all held in Lusaka. Our first seminar we discussed the Constitution and review of the Constitution, looking at our experience as a country in reviewing the Constitution and what have been our challenges. It is something that comes up quite often. So we were looking at that. Our second legal seminar was on unexplained wealth orders. Unexplained wealth orders, in very simple terms, the orders we have been seeing that are being used in corruption cases, where one loses what is perceived as corruptly acquired wealth or property instead of a jail term. So we were looking at the readiness of our legal system to use unexplained wealth orders in the fight against corruption. Then our third seminar was on professionalism in the public service. As you know, the public service is the engine that implements and runs government business. So we were looking at professionalism in the service. To what extent are we professional? What are the gaps in our professionalism? And in all these, we were mostly also looking at the legal framework. Is it adequate? What are the gaps? What do we need to resolve to try and ensure that our constitutional review process is one that stands the test of time? We have a professional public service, starting from appointments to accountability and implementation of government programs, and also in enhancing the fight against corruption. So for 2024 going forward, as a commission, the commission resolved that instead of just holding the seminars in Lusaka, we are a national commission. We should get a national view and also discuss these issues at a national level. So Livingstone is the first provincial seminar that we are holding. We have 2 more seminars before the year end that we will hold in different cities and on different topics as well.
Interesting. There you have it, dear listeners. And of course, maybe, Madam Commissioner Nkhata, let's get to it. Maybe talk about the seminar you'll be holding this afternoon under the theme Sustainability in Urban Planning, planning our cities for tomorrow's generation. What will be the focus of the seminar be like? Maybe you can give us an insight or maybe an overview of what will be expected in this seminar today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gift. As has already been stated by our director, Mrs. Chanda, it's very important for us to have this conversation around sustainable urban planning. Our focus for this morning's seminar is to get as many members of the public, as many key stakeholders engaged in legal conversations around urban planning. This specific seminar acknowledges that, land use is responsible for our developmental activities. We're largely dependent on it as a country. And so it becomes important for us to know what's the best way in which we can use our land as a key natural resource to advance the needs of the people as they arise today, but also to think about the needs of future generations, knowing that it's quite important for us to harness what the benefits of this land resource will give, but also be very prudent in the way we use this particular resource. And so, other than looking at the developmental activities that many Zambians or persons in Zambia are engaged with, particularly with the land at the center, we also consider some of the negative impacts of our use of land. And so we will look at the legal framework that regulates land use in the country, that regulates urban planning, and from there we'll also look at administrative provisions that regulate how we get to use our land. We will also focus on what are some of the economic benefits of land use today, and how can we strike a balance between regulating land use and harnessing the benefits that this particular resource gives us. So business considerations obviously will be paramount in our seminar. Lastly, we'll also look at the environmental and human rights impacts and what are the effects that this has. So we really do acknowledge that when we talk about land, we're talking about from different angles and different aspects, and so we will have experts in these different areas that I've highlighted that will speak to us about our key topic and help us understand how indeed we can promote sustainable land management.
Indeed, it's something that we should look up to, and of course something that we need to attain. And it's very interesting to learn that you have all those aligned for this seminar. Now, let's try to maybe break down your seminar. Maybe as you kindly explain it to us and the listeners, what sustainable urban planning is all about. And when we say sustainability, what exactly are we talking about, Madam Commissioner?
Okay, sure. Like I've stated, when we talk about sustainability, we are talking about using the land in a way that is beneficial not only to the people living today but to future generations. So we know that there are many activities, like I mentioned earlier, that land use constitutes over 50% of our developmental activities, because it really is the major way by which Zambians sustain their livelihoods. And so we have to think about using this land and meeting our daily needs, but doing it in such a way that is not harmful to the land, because then future generations don't get to benefit from that use of land. And I can give a few examples. When you think about the way we do our mining, for example, how are we mining in such a way that we're not depleting resources, and that in our mining activities we're not leaving health hazards behind for the people who are living in the mining areas. The same way, when we talk about tourism, as being in Livingstone, we have to think about how do we expand tourism to attract more foreigners to come into the country, to increase our GDP through tourism and the activities that we do under that, but do it in such a way that we are not leaving anyone behind, and we're not forgetting the future generations will also come and depend on the same resources for their own livelihoods. So really, when we talk about sustainability and when we talk about urban management, we're thinking about this unplanned settlements, where we're building our houses, where we are allowing streams of water to collect, where we are allowing them to flow. How are we managing the natural resources, such as the animals that we have? I gave examples of the mining already. So all of those activities that we're conducting, if we do them in a way that allows for everyone to benefit from those particular resources, then we're being sustainable. But if we're careless and we are only thinking of today, and we're allowing houses to be built anywhere, schools to be built anywhere, businesses to be run anywhere, it becomes very difficult for us to plan essential services. It becomes very difficult for us to realize fundamental human rights, such as the right to health, the right to life, to promote people who live lives of dignity. And so this is really why it's cardinal for us to talk about sustainability in the use of land.
I can see that you are concerned about the future of tomorrow, but somebody will be asking the questions out there and say, why should we be worried about tomorrow generation, future generations, when we have these resources that we have been blessed with to address our immediate needs, which, as you know, are many. So now why should we be worried about the future generations? Madam Chanda, why are we worried about tomorrow?
That's an interesting question, Gift. I think, with everything that we do, especially for us who consider ourselves a Christian nation, let me start from that end. We have been put on this earth as stewards to look after the natural resources. So we must, if we don't, as Commissioner Nkhata has indicated, use them in a sustainable manner, there will be nothing for the future to use. If you look at us today, we are fighting drought. Zambia, for example, this year, it has been declared a national disaster by the president, and it is because we have not applied sustainability in the way we have used our resources in the past. We have a large part of the country that is drought prone. This year, this was one season, and I think most people thought they had planted adequate maize. We are not sure if we are going to have enough to eat. So when we talk about the future generations, it's actually not only the children that are coming after our children, even the ones that are growing up today. So it affects us in every way. We just came out of dealing with a national cholera crisis in the country. That is affected also by sustainable planning or sustainable use of natural resources, the use of land in terms of housing, how we have utilized our forests or not utilized them adequately. We now do not have water. It also talks about agricultural practices. How are we utilizing or using our land? So it is very important because it speaks to our very survival as human beings, as a race and as a people. So it is something that all of us need to be concerned about. Even with COVID-19, some of the remote effects we saw how the environment improved when COVID forced all of us to sit at home and not move about, worsen the already worsening environmental situation. So that is why we must think about current and future generations.
Maybe Madam Nkhata has something to say over this.
Yeah, it's really important for us to think about future generations, like I mentioned earlier, because we are creating a world for ourselves as much as we are for our children, our great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth. When we talk about development, it's pointless to be doing everything that we can for us to enjoy life today and forget about tomorrow. So in the way that we live our lives, we have to be prudent and to develop this culture of knowing that, even when I am not here, I've left a better place for the next person, and that hopefully will replicate with the future generations to come. It's really important for us to think about that, because some of the problems that we have today in the Zambian society come from, as Mrs. Chanda has said, our actions of the past. So if someone thought about us and was worried about us, we wouldn't be experiencing what we're experiencing today. So for me, I think that is one of the key factors why we should worry about future generations. We do not want to be careless with the way that we use the resources that we have, because we know that life will continue beyond us. And really, that should be our goal, to create a better future than we have today. Thank you.
All right, our dear listeners, with the time is 09:44, you are listening to Zambezi FM radio exclusive program brought to you by Zambia Law Development Commission. In the studios, I'm not alone. I'm joined by Commissioner Nkhata, not forgetting Mrs. Chanda, and of course, I'm your host, Gifting Ambi. Now, Zambia Law Development Commission. Mrs. Chanda, how does the law relate to sustainable urban planning as a phrase derived from the theme sustainability in urban planning, planning our cities for tomorrow?
Thank you, Gift. I'll start with speaking about the law generally. In simple terms, the law guides our behavior as a society and as a community. It tells us what we can do. It tells us what we can't do. And in the event that we do the things we are not supposed to do and someone suffers harm from our behavior, the law tells us how that person can be compensated, or how those of us that may be carrying out that wrongful conduct may end up punished. So in the same way, in relation to sustainable urban planning, the law should be looked at as a tool. It should be looked at as a means to help us plan sustainably, to help us utilize our resources in such a way that we meet our current needs, but we also leave something for future generations. If you'll allow me to give you a few quick examples of what we might have sitting in our law right now in relation to sustainable planning. If we start with the Constitution, which is the highest law of our land, which every law must adhere to and which all of us must follow. The Constitution provides duties and responsibilities for each of us as citizens. And one of the responsibilities the Constitution places on all of us is sustainable use of our natural resources. We all have a responsibility to look after our natural resources and ensure that we use them in a manner that allows us to meet our needs, but also allows our country to continue to grow and to continue to thrive. The Constitution also has national values and principles. If you recall, Gift, the President was addressing us, or he addressed Parliament a week or two ago on the national values and principles. Among those national values and principles include the values of non-discrimination, equity, social justice, and sustainable development itself. So with the national values and principles, we are expected to apply those to any legislation that we develop, to interpretation of any laws, and the development and implementation of government policies and programs. And in relation to planning and sustainable planning, we've got environmental legislation. Commissioner Nkhata has spoken about use of natural resources and land. We have environmental legislation which guides development projects. It talks about environmental issues and what our responsibilities are. And in the event that those are not met, that legislation guides us on what should be done. We have legislation on our forests that is supposed to help us with sustainable management and use of our forests, which, as we know, we're depleting our forests. We are using a lot of it for charcoal. We are clearing it for agricultural purposes, for purposes of building housing. We are ending up with climate change and the lack of rain and other effects that we are seeing today. In our planning legislation specifically, it not only guides us on how we undertake our development activities, but one important aspect of our planning legislation is it also facilitates participation by local communities, participation at all levels, which is very important in any development agenda, because if the communities themselves do not participate in planning, we will not know what their needs are. Will not know in what direction we must go. So Livingstone, for example, it's important that the local communities plan how they would like to see the city developed, what social or other programs they would like to see put in place for development of needs. It is the communities and the people themselves who know their needs and their requirements better than anyone that might be sitting anywhere else in a planning department. So that is just how the legislation is important. It facilitates development. It facilitates ensuring that we plan in such a manner that we meet our needs today, but we also remember tomorrow.
Interesting indeed, planning for tomorrow. All right, now back to the legal seminar that is to be held today, this afternoon. And it shows that the theme sustainability in urban planning our cities for tomorrow's generations. Now, what motivated you to actually to focus on this topic, sustainability in urban planning?
As has already been said, Gift, our motivation for this was to see how we can contribute to realizing a key focus area in the 8th National Development Plan that the government has put in place, that focuses on sustainable land management, and that against the background of what is our lived reality as Zambians today, the different kind of activities that I've already referred to, the detail that Mrs. Chanda has given on the laws that we have that in many respects are progressive, and really if they were adhered to and implemented, then we wouldn't have the extent of the damage that we've had now in our environment, in our land use, and so on and so forth. And so the motivation was to see how we can bridge the gap between what we have in laws, in administrative frameworks, and what is in the lived practices, as well as push the government agenda to ensure that we have sustainable urban planning and land use. In doing that, I think it's also important for us to continuously engage with the members of the public, to engage with different stakeholders who are playing different roles in ensuring the realization of the laws that we've already enacted, and perhaps also taking them to greater heights in the overall objective of realizing sustainable land management. So the motivation for us was not just to do this exercise where we are discussing with people, but discussing for a goal that is to ensure that we do promote sustainable land management. And for us, it became also important to look at what other countries are doing, to learn from other countries. How is it that they are achieving what they are achieving? And so to create a space where we can have this dialogue with key stakeholders, but also learn from what other countries are doing to promote sustainable urban planning for Zambia.
All right, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and Zambia Law Development has started that step. And of course, you've embarked on this journey. What has caused you to embark on this process? Now, even as you're answering that one, you've chosen Livingstone to be the first. Why Livingstone?
Well, one of the issues that I identified or spoke to earlier was tourism. Livingstone is the tourist capital of the country, and we know that even as much as some of the practices that we have around land use are common across the country, there were some unique experiences that we get from different districts, different provinces, depending on how they are set up and their livelihood. Livingstone is one of those that gives us a unique perspective, particularly when we take into account the issue of tourism, and we know that we can harness great resources from people coming in, and that would go to other developmental programs for the government and other stakeholders. Unfortunately, we are not only concerned with making money for today, right? We must make money for today and for future generations. And so as we expand in our tourism, as we put measures in place to ensure that we are tapping into the resources, the natural resources that we have in this province, it's very important for us to also see how we can do this in a sustainable way. So Livingstone was chosen with that in mind, that it will give us some unique perspectives. And even as we talk about tourism, I think we know that we have a few compounds or locations that also are experiencing challenges with lifestyle, and these ultimately affect one's health and one's ability to use land in a more manageable way. And so that conversation in the context of Livingstone is very important. Yesterday we had the opportunity to meet with the mayor of the province and of Livingstone, and in the conversations that we had with her, she very, very knowledgeable about where the challenges are in the city, and how best can we view, take into account the lived experiences of these different areas that she mentioned, which hopefully we will be visiting today before our seminar, to kind of get the sense of the experiences that people are having, to bring that experience from the ground onto our statute books and ensure that our laws are actually responsive. And as Mrs. Chanda said, it's very important that we are not just seen as the Zambia Law Development Commission for Lusaka, but for the entire country. And so bringing these unique experiences from cities like Livingstone become very important.
Blessed are the people of Livingstone to have this seminar held in Livingstone. And of course, one will be wondering where will this seminar be held to, and if it was going to be held, who are going to be participating in this seminar, Madam Chanda?
Gift, we are holding our seminar at the Courtyard. I'm sorry, my map of Livingstone is a bit lost on me. Yes, the Courtyard Hotels.
Opposite Zambezi Junction.
Yes, thank you. Opposite Zambezi Junction. And we have invited representatives from different sectors. We've got government. We've invited government departments. We've invited non-governmental organizations that are working within Livingstone. We also made provision for members of the public to participate in this particular meeting. We had sent out a call on social media for people to register to participate in this meeting. So we did get a fairly good response.
I didn't register. Can I be part of the conference seminar?
I'm sure we can still have space to accommodate your gift if you would be happy to participate in that. Also, where if we are going to check again today if we're still getting responses. Our public participation was first come, first served. So if we end up with a very overwhelming response, if we have more people than the venue can accommodate, we are also making provision for online participation. So we are looking forward to interesting discussions this afternoon. And we are also going to have a panel discussion gift, which is going to comprise of local experts from within Livingstone, who are going to be speaking to us, as Commission has said, about the Livingstone experience with sustainable planning.
Maybe as we are coming to the near end of our program, looking at time, Madam Chanda, can our listeners do anything to support sustainability in urban planning? And if you're answering that one, is there any way that our listeners can participate in the seminar or share some of their thoughts on sustainability in urban planning with you?
Yes, in terms of support, I think it's the little things. We also learned from the mayor's office yesterday that Livingstone is aggressively planting trees, asking all the visitors to plant trees. We found that very encouraging. So the little things, planting trees, recycling, reusing plastic, prudent use of our water, changing our agricultural practices and trying to, use those that will bring back the butterflies, bring back the chongololos. We don't see them anymore. If we can try those little things, like you said, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So if each of us plays our part, we can try and share the information with each other. I think that is also what is also very important.
Thanks so much for coming, and have a pleasant day. Have a fruitful sustainability in our urban planning. Thanks so much, N.Chanda. Maybe as we are saying bye-byes, we under a second, Madam Chanda, Madam Nkhata.
Okay, thank you. I completely agree with Mrs. Chanda that lifestyle changes are very important. Ordinary members of society can do a lot in helping us attain this theme that we have, sustainability in urban planning our cities for tomorrow's generation. And so it's not an issue for the government alone. It's not an issue for businesses alone. It's not an issue for members of the public alone. It's an issue for everyone. Thank you very much for having me, Gift.
Thank you so very much. Have a fruitful seminar. And of course, our dear listeners, there you have it. That has been our program this morning, brought to you by Zambia Law Development Commission, as they'll be holding a seminar this afternoon under the theme Sustainability in the Urban Planning, planning for our cities for tomorrow's generation. And there you have it. I've been your host, Gifting Ambi. And we meet again at the seminar right there at Courtyard Hotels this afternoon. Good afternoon, good morning, and have a blessed morning.